So in this video I'm going to be doing an unscripted tactical analysis of Porto's third goal, which came just after half time, explaining the tactical issues that United have both in and out of possession. So here Casemiro switches the ball out to Mazraoui. You can see the Porto midfield but also the United midfield are squeezed over to United's left side of the pitch, giving both Mazraoui and Ahmad a lot of space on the far side. And so as you can see here now, Mazraoui and Ahmad have the ball close to the touchline, and it's a 2v2 with the Porto left back and left sided midfielder. However, if you look at the positioning of the United players as Ahmad receives the ball, you can see that pretty much all of the United players, apart from Mazraoui, are squeezed over to the other side of the pitch, or at least in the centre. They're not on the right side supporting Ahmad, and this isn't a problem if you do want to isolate the fullback in a 1v1, as Ahmad is kind of here, but really he's in a 2v1. Mazraoui is deeper and so not really supporting him, and for a winger say like a Matoma or a Doku or a Savinho, this would be a perfect situation because you're able to isolate the opposition's left back against a 1v1 specialist. But Ahmad and Garnacho and Rashford, basically all of United's wingers, even Antony as well, none of them are 1v1 specialists, in the sense that I would consider all of them reactive dribblers rather than proactive dribblers. And what I mean by this is a reactive so let me start with a proactive dribbler. A proactive dribbler is someone like a Savinho or a Doku who basically doesn't need the fullback in front of them to move before they can beat them down the outside or the inside, whereas a reactive dribbler relies on the fullback to make the first movement, to adjust their body positioning before they can then shift the ball quickly, off balance the defender and drive into the space that's been vacated. But before I go any further, let me tell you about the jersey of the day. Is this Manchester United white away shirt from 2006-2007 with Ronaldo on the back. You can go over to Jersey FIFA and check out that shirt. They've also got the new season jerseys as well as club and international retro jerseys as well. If you use code Atlantis at checkout, you'll get a discount. A link will be in my Instagram bio, which I will leave linked in the description. And so the issue in this particular clip, but also just throughout United's general play, is that United have reactive dribblers. Garnacho, Rashford, Ahmad, Antony as well. They're all players who rely on the defender to move first. And that means that they also rely on runners ahead, because if you have an over or an underlapping run, the fullback in front of you has to make a decision. Either he holds his ground and vacates the space in behind, which will allow you to play a pass down the outside or in behind for the underlapping run, or in order to try to cut off that pass, they drop off slightly or move or shift to one side, and this opens up the space for United's winger Ahmad in this situation to then either cut inside in field or drive down the outside. However, as Ahmad receives the ball here, you can see that United's setup is essentially treating him like a 1v1 isolationist, which he can beat his man in a 1v1, but I wouldn't put him on the same level as Matoma or Doku or players like that. I think he's far more of a reactive dribbler, someone who needs that over or underlapping run in order to create the space for him then to dribble into. But Mazraoui sits deep. You've got Bruno Fernandes, who's holding a central position, which seems to be a positional instruction from Ten Hag, because you would expect Bruno Fernandes in this position to be making that underlapping run into that space that has been created by stretching the Porto left-sided centre-back and left-back. However, United don't do this. It doesn't seem like a coordinated pattern of play. And Mazraoui behind Ahmad isn't providing an overlap either. He's sitting deep. And so Ahmad essentially is in a 2v1 situation here. And so if he wants to play forward, he could go back to Mazraoui, but if he wants to play forward, he essentially has to beat two Porto players in this situation. And so inevitably, it's pretty easy for Porto to crowd him out. Ahmad tries to go on the inside. It looks like he initially beats the left back, but because he's in a 2v1, the Porto left-sided midfielder can get across and he makes a tackle, and now Porto win the ball back, and United once again struggle to even progress the ball into the final third. And this is why a lot of the issues that United face in possession are from the tactical setup, a lack of coordinated patterns of play. Ten Hag needs to be instructing players to make certain runs. It needs to be done on the training ground so that players know automatically as soon as this player receives the ball in this position, as soon as this gap appears in the opposition back line, this is where the run has to be made, not necessarily just to receive the ball, but also to drag the opposition players away from the space and open up space elsewhere. And so Porto work the ball back to Costa in goal, and you can see that Porto have the ball in their defensive third, and United are pressing in what looks to be a 4-1-4-1 shape, with Bruno Fernandes and Eriksen pushed up a lot higher than Casemiro, in line with Ahmad and Garnacho. And now you can see what I mean by saying clear tactical issues. This is just the basics. Look how big the gap is between the Manchester United front five, Casemiro and the back line. It's been pretty evident over the last year that Casemiro's legs are completely gone, and for some reason Ten Hag thinks it's suitable to use him not only in an aggressive pressing system where he's going to have to cover a lot of space out of possession, but also in a possession system where United are constantly transitioning the attack quickly rather than holding on to possession, and so there's a lot of turnovers, and so Casemiro is required to do a lot of running, but this is only exacerbated further by Ten Hag's completely disjointed press. I mean, you can see the amount of space he has to cover, and as the Porto right-sided centre-back receives the ball, there's the initial opportunity to split Eriksen and Garnacho with this pass into this massive amount of space wide of Casemiro. I don't see why Ten Hag is using a 4-1-4-1 press if he's going to have the defensive line so deep that one of the centre-backs can't really push out to help support Casemiro. I mean, this is just the basics of tactical setup. You can't claim that Ten Hag's an elite level manager if he's making simple tactical errors like this. And as the play moves on, even when United get back into their defensive shape in the middle third, you can see the massive amount of space between the midfield line. I mean, people are using the cop-out that the players are just lazy and they aren't working hard enough, and this is just not true at all. Ahmad is being told to press aggressively high up the pitch, sitting in line with Eriksen, Fernandes and Garnacho, and Rashford also and Garnacho were asked to do this on the other side as well. You can't then expect them to be back in position, narrow alongside Casemiro within a few seconds. And the fact that Ten Hag had Ugarte, who would be much better in this role than Casemiro, makes this even worse. As you can see when the Porto central midfielder who's sitting between the lines runs off of Casemiro, the Brazilian just doesn't have the acceleration to get across and cover that space, which leads to the Porto right-sided centre-back being able to pretty simply split the Manchester United midfield line and work the ball in behind United's midfield. But what makes it even worse is that the United defensive line aren't squeezing up as high as they should. Last season there was a constant rhetoric around, well, Ten Hag can't play a high line because he hasn't got Martinez or a centre-back like De Ligt, with the claim being made that once Martinez came back and United brought in a top-level centre-back, then they could use a high line, and it wasn't Ten Hag, it was simply the centre-backs available. Well, here you can see that's just complete nonsense, because with Martinez and De Ligt at centre-back, we're still dropping the back line far too deep. But despite the obvious tactical errors, Lisandro Martinez does make a positional mistake initially because he seems to move over onto De Ligt's man. I'm not actually sure why he didn't just hold his position. It just seems like everyone in the United back line doesn't have a clear idea of where they should be or what they should be doing. Dalot to Martinez's left can't really sit narrower because he's ready to press the right winger on the far side with Garnacho pushing ahead. And so as Porto work the ball between the lines in behind Casemiro, you can now see Martinez's positional error, as that space between him and Dalot is completely open, but as the ball gets threaded through, Martinez actually manages to catch up with the Porto player. But this is where I think we see the limitations of his ability as a centre-back in the modern day. I mean, people seem to be raving about Martinez as one of the best centre-backs in the Premier League alongside Gabriel and Saliba, and it's just not the case. I remember at the start of the season people telling me that Lisandro Martinez couldn't play at left-back because he wasn't very good in 1v1s or defending in the channel. Well, at centre-back he's going to have to do this as well, so if he isn't good enough at doing this at left-back, then logically he's not going to be able to do this at centre-back either. I think if United had a centre-back on the left side like Mickey van der Ven or Alessandro Bastoni, they definitely deal with this because they have the acceleration as well as the 1v1 defending ability to defend in this sort of position. Martinez isn't able to stop the Porto player driving into the box, and in the centre, to be fair, I don't think De Ligt makes a massive mistake, but he definitely loses the 1v1 battle in the box against Amordion. Martinez can't stop the low cross, and Amordion fakes like he's going to go to the back post before darting in front of De Ligt. The cross finds him, and alongside his movement, the finish is of a elite level centre forward. And so whilst Martinez definitely is culpable in two different situations, first positionally and then defending the space in a 1v1, the initial issues both in and out of possession come from the tactical setup of Ten Hag. And this is my point about Ruud van Nistelrooy. Surely he's telling Ten Hag that setting up a midfield where the defensive line is dropping off, the front four with Eriksen and Bruno Fernandes pushing ahead of Casemiro pushing up, leaving Casemiro completely isolated, is just nonsensical. I mean, this is just the basics of tactical setup. So either Ten Hag is just completely ignoring Ruud van Nistelrooy, or Ruud van Nistelrooy himself isn't picking up on these issues or how to solve them. And whichever of the two it is, both are incredibly concerning. The first option means that we have a manager who is so stubborn, he won't even listen to his assistant manager. In which case, why is he staying on as Manchester United manager into this season? How can you have a manager where most of the fan base wanted him to stay, who has an assistant manager who is pointing out the tactical errors, and he's just completely ignoring him and just sticking to what he's doing? That's so absurd to me that I just can't see that happening. Because genuinely, if that is the case, Ten Hag isn't even a Premier League level manager. I mean, this is just the basics of tactical setup and how to set up a defensive shape. I mean, I can't even imagine Gareth Southgate setting up a tactical system this bad with Casemiro completely isolated in the centre of the pitch, with the back line dropping off, the front five pushing up. having an assistant manager who's pointing this out and just completely ignoring him. But the alternative as well suggests that Ruud van Nistelrooy himself isn't picking up on these blatant tactical issues that pretty much anyone who has any tactical understanding of the game can see pretty clearly. Now obviously I don't know which one it is, I'm not inside the Manchester United changing room or around the coaching staff, but that has to be sorted out. We can't be giving Ruud van Nistelrooy the job if he's complicit in these tactical errors. If United are going to give him the interim manager job for the rest of the season, this has to be cleared up. Ineos have to ask Ruud van Nistelrooy whether he understands the tactical issues and if he's suggesting them to Ten Hag and if Ten Hag's listening to him. If Ruud van Nistelrooy comes out and says, no, me and Ten Hag are communicating fine, well that leads me to believe that he isn't seeing these tactical issues either. In which case, if he does replace Ten Hag as a manager, how is this going to improve? Let me know what you think in the comment section below. You can also check out my Patreon. I've got some unreleased tactical videos, as well as a Telegram group chat which you can check out. I'll leave that link below.